Chaim, Yadinina Marina Rabina Melech Moshiach Leilam Boy. On behalf of Beis Menachem, Beis Moshiach, and all of us at Chabad of UK, I would like to extend a hearty Baruchim Aboim to all the guests who have come for the 15th European Moshiach Congress, which coincides with the Yom Tov of Yutes Kislev. At the celebration in 1942, the Frierdiker Rebbe said that we Chabad Hasidim have a custom of the Alter Rebbe's Hasidim, that on Yutes Kislev we say Good Yom Tov before and after Ma'ariv, and throughout Yutes Kislev when Hasidim meet in shul or in the street. In Toshin Gimel, the Hayoim Yom was printed for the first time, and at the end, the entry for the 18th of Kislev says Good Yom Tov, L'Shana Toiva, L'Limut HaChasidus, V'Darkei HaChasidus, Tikosei V'Chesel Seimon. Good Yom Tov, may you be written and sealed for a good year in learning Chasidus and the ways of Chasidus. Poischim de Bamalchus, we start this evening's proceedings with reciting the Rebbe's Kapitel, Kuf Yud Gimel. Usually, we have been soicha for the last 14 years to have Rabbi Chaim Shmuel Menachem Mendel Liberov, one of Ziknei Anash and one of the founders of Beis Moshiach in London, to come and to say the Rebbe's Kapitel. Unfortunately, he's not able to be with us tonight, and we wish to take this opportunity to wish him a refuah shalema, bekorev mamish. Amen. Chaim Shmuel Menachem Mendel ben Miriam Mariasha, have a refuah shalema. So going from one age group to a much younger age group, but keeping it within the Dalet Amos of where Rabbi Liberov lives, which is, he's a Shochan Toiv to us on Paget Road. So I would like to start, it's time to hand over the reins of Beis Moshiach to a younger generation for a change, and let the old guard step aside, and as I say, Koyach HaBen Yosem Mikoyach Oav. So I'd like to call on the Pirchei Kahuna, Tzemach, to come and to recite the Rebbe's Kapitel, and I would ask everybody to be upstanding.
Hallelujah, hallo Abdi Adonai, hallo Hashem Adonai. Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach mi'at v'adaylam. Mizrach Shem Hashem mevoyim olo Shem Adonai. Rama kogoyim Adonai, al Shemayim kevoidai. Mika Adonai Eloheinu hamagbil לשובס. המשפיל לי לירויס בשמיים ובארץ. מקים ימי עבודו מאש בישרים אביי. והי שבעים נדיבים עם נדיבי עמוי. שיבי הקרס הבייס הם הבונן שמחה הללויה.
Shkoyach Sema. Very well done. Bez Hashem should learn also to be a chairman, a better chairman than your father.
Well, he's sitting on a chair now. I mean, good start.
I heard that during a Farbrengen, when Remendel Futafas Olav Sholem demanded of himself and his students to do what the Rebbe demands and not hide behind religious excuses, he would tell the following story. When the Soviet government confiscated all private property and state owned it, it was absolutely forbidden to hoard anything. For if someone had private wealth, it showed that he was one of the middle class who took advantage of the working class. He was carted off to the basements of the KGB for interrogation so that he would admit, willingly or otherwise, where he hid the rest of his treasures, which he didn't really have, so that it could be returned to the workers from whom it was robbed. Then he would be punished for trying to hide his crime. In those days, when people had hardly any money at all, the very poor would deposit their last coins with other Jews who were more established than they. This way it would be available to them in an emergency during those times when there was nothing to eat or if they needed money to bribe the communists. Once a poor Jew left his last pennies with his neighbor who was, relatively speaking, better off than him. And when he desperately needed the money, he went to collect it from his friend. But his neighbor, when that time occurred, hardly rushed to return the money. He didn't flatly deny that he had it, but he always pushed him off with various excuses. But the poor man really needed the money, so he kept returning to beg for it. When the neighbor opened the door, he greeted the poor man warmly. He invited him in to sit down. He served him a glass of tea. And then he would discuss this and that, and time would go by, but he made sure not to get on to the topic of money. Every so often, the poor man tried to ask for his money, but the neighbor ignored him and turned the conversation to other topics. The poor man finally got up some nerve and said, "Enough! Give me back my money. I need it urgently. Don't push me off any longer." The neighbor rolled his eyes upwards and said, "What are you worried about? Cast your burden upon Hashem, and He will sustain you." The Rebbe Melech HaMoshiach once spoke at length at a Farbrengen about the greatness of action. The halacha is that even if a person has the greatest of intentions, if he does not do an action, he does not fulfill the mitzvah. In the Sikha, the Rebbe stressed that it isn't enough to appreciate the greatness of action, und kocht sich in darauf, und hab na Geschmack in dem, and to talk about it enthusiastically and take pleasure in it, for that is only the pleasure in doing good, which falls short of actually doing the good deed. The review of the Sikha that took place later was done well. The person explained it adeptly, emphasizing the greatness of action and how pleasure and inner feelings on their own were not enough. but he reviewed it with such enthusiasm that they said about him that he only internalized the pleasure and greatness of action, but the fact that we must actually do something didn't occur to him at all. We all understand that we must do something. We must do something big. We must do something to shake up the world, starting with ourselves, our environment, and the world at large. We cannot let this auspicious time pass us by, chas v'sholem. And as the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach put it, everyone must take it upon themselves to add in the deeds, Torah and Avodah of the Frierdiker Rebbe, especially in the Bittul and the Iskashrus to the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Nossi Hadoir, HaNossi Hu HaKoil, the leader is everything. Everyone, each person's entire being must be dedicated to the leader of the generation, the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation, Goyal Rishon, the first Redeemer, and Goyal Achron, the last Redeemer, through fulfilling his shlichus, namely to bring about the days of Moshiach in actuality. Additionally, the knowledge that the Rebbe, the leader of our generation, will walk right in now and look at each of his Hasidim and Mikushorim to ascertain their standing, inspires us to finish all our work. The Rebbe not only spoke about actual deeds, but emphasized the bittul and his kashrus to the leader of the generation. We must remember that the Rebbe also underscored the fact that the bittul and his kashrus are expressed specifically through fulfilling his shlichus to bring Moshiach. So someone who tries to focus on bittul and his kashrus and giving himself over entirely to the Rebbe, but thinks that this can be done without being involved in the shlichus of the hour to bring Moshiach, misses the point. This is not bittul, this is not his kashrus, and it's not giving oneself over to the Rebbe. When it came time for the Jewish people to leave Mitzrayim, Chazal tell us that many Jews did not want to leave. These were not isolated cases, for according to one explanation in Rashi, it was 4 out of 5 Jews who did not want to leave. That's 80% of the nation who died during the plague of darkness. Only 1/5 actually left Mitzrayim. According to other midrashim, the numbers are even larger. Only 1 out of 50 wanted to leave, or even 1 out of 500. The Rebbe explains in a Sicha on Achron Shel Pesach in 1962 that we are told all this to teach us that even if it seems to us that our Jewish environment is not interested in leaving Golus, we shouldn't let them discourage us. We have to do what we have to do, and in the end, everybody will see it our way. Now, amongst those Jews who left Mitzrayim, there were great sinners. Micha's idol, which appeared in the book of Shoftim, came from Mitzrayim. Micha himself was one of the babies that the Mitzrayim put into the wall of a building, and Moshe Rabbeinu rescued him. This same Micha took an idol with him out of Mitzrayim, across the Yam Suf, had it at Matan Torah, and throughout the 40 years of miracles in the Midbar. So many Jews did not leave Mitzrayim because they didn't want to go. It doesn't say anywhere that they worshipped idols. It is very possible that some of them were even tzaddikim. Their problem was that they simply did not want to leave. Micha, on the other hand, was an idol worshipper who took an idol with him out of Mitzrayim, but he did, in fact, want to leave. The Rebbe explains in Lekutei Sichos, Chelik Yud Aleph, that since their sin was in the very matter at hand, in not wanting to leave, for this reason They were not allowed to leave, for a prosecutor does not defend. But even the greatest sinners, idol worshippers, could simply leave because they wanted to leave. The Rebbe goes on to say that in contrast to the Geula from Mitzrayim, in the final redemption, the final Geula, Moshiach will not leave any Jew in Golus. We can learn a tremendous lesson from this for our times. Although it is true that everyone is guaranteed to leave Golus, nevertheless the Geula will be achieved specifically through our work in Golus. And as the Rebbe said, we must do everything in our power to bring Moshiach. We certainly must learn Nigla and Chasidus, daven at length, do mitzvahs behiddur, strengthen our Avos Yisrael, and do mivtzoim, etc., especially when we know, as the Rebbe said, that at any moment the Rebbe can walk in and look at his Hasidim to see where they are standing. However, if all this takes us away from the goal to bring Moshiach, then even with all the righteousness in the world, we would have been left in Mitzrayim back then. But when we follow the leader of the generation and want to leave the present Mitzrayim and do everything we can to make this happen, then even if Chas v'Sholom one serves idols, he can still leave Mitzrayim. So there is no question that we must take on good resolutions in Torah and mitzvahs in general, and in Yoni Chasidus especially, and in Bittul and Iskashrus and Mivtzoim, but the main focus has to be the leader of the generation's goal to bring Moshiach. Moreover, this must be done both internally and publicly. Each of us must personally live with Moshiach, especially by learning in Yoni Moshiach, in the weekly Devar Malchus, the Sichos of Nun Aleph Nun Beis, where the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach explains what is demanded of us in these times, and where the Rebbe describes the most effective ways to bring Moshiach. And at the same time, we must publicize and proclaim that Moshiach has already revealed, and all that remains to be done is to greet him or accept him so that he can do his shlichus and take the Jewish people out of Golus. When the Alter Rebbe went to prison, it was with his full consent. He accepted all the spiritual and physical suffering it entailed willingly. The Rebbe spoke many times about the idea of each Rebbe being the Memali Mokum, literally the one who fills the place of his predecessors. All the Rebbeim who came before him. In other words, each Rebbe contains all the aspects of the previous Rebbeim, in addition to the unique aspect of his particular generation. In the same way that it would be ludicrous to suggest that Hashem tried to do something but failed, it is equally ludicrous to say that the Rebbe Shlita attempted something but did not succeed. This principle cannot be emphasized enough. Hashem grants us free will, but wants us to choose what is right. Ubecharta b'chaim, you shall choose life. If a person abuses the privilege and chooses evil, Hashem eventually evens the score, repaying the evil according to his wickedness and the righteous according to his righteousness. Yet during the interim, while the Rasha is still choosing evil, it would be absurd to say that Hashem tried to get him to be good but failed. Hashem knows everything that will happen in advance and is always in charge. The fact that Hashem sometimes allows things to appear differently is due to his own reasons. Similarly, when the Rebbe begged and implored us to act in a certain way, he knew what would happen in the future. Yet had the Rebbe wanted to, he could have made things go smoothly from the very beginning. Although it is beyond our understanding, the Rebbe has his own reasons for wanting things to happen the way they are. The Rebbe desires refinement without breaking. That is, that we act within the natural order and in an upward direction from below to above. For ultimately, despite all the pain this involves, it is precisely in this manner that the divine intention can be best fulfilled. We recently celebrated Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and many know what happened in Tovshin Lamed Ches, and the Rebbe knew that was going to happen in Tovshin Lamed Ches, and everything connected afterwards with the court battle over the Sforim. The Rebbe knew what would happen when he spoke about Mi Yehudi, about Shleimus Ha'oretz. The Rebbe knew about the first Chof Zion Odar and the second one, and about Gimel Tammuz. The Rebbe knows everything that goes on in the world, including what happens within Lubavitch. Nothing occurs without his permission and for a godly purpose, that we ourselves fulfill our obligation. And it goes without saying that the divine intention will ultimately be fulfilled 100%. Even when it appears as if things are going contrary to the Rebbe's will, we must remember that the Rebbe is always in control. Sometimes the advantage has to come precisely from the darkness in order for the light to illuminate that much brighter. For ultimately, the Eibishter wird ausführen und der Rebbe wird ausführen. Hashem will accomplish what he has to do, and the Rebbe will accomplish what he has to do. One thing the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach has taught us is that every event should spur us on to implore Hashem for the Geula, and we must continue to bombard Hashem and Melech HaMashiach with the cry Ad Mosai. And as the Rebbe explained in Beis Nissen, Tovshin Mem Ches, Ad Mosai is primarily connected with Yechia Melech, especially as it pertains to Melech HaMashiach, whose sovereignty must be accepted by the people from below to above. In this manner, when the Jewish people fulfill their divine shlichus and bring the whole world to Hashem and to Moshiach, non-Jews as well, through the Shiva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, Moshiach will be revealed to the world at large. And as we say, and all the inhabitants of the world will recognize and know that every knee should bend to you, every tongue should swear by your name. May we immediately see with our fleshy eyes the revealed good of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach Siskalus, and that should be taken for Miyad Mamish now, Chi Adonenu Moreinu V'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach L'Olam V'Oed.
Amen. Chaim. Chaim.
Not yet. We're now going to be playing a video of the Bar Malchus from Pashas Vayeshev for this year, from Liras Es Malkeino, so everybody should enjoy.
Was am der Zeige der Nächte gekommen, der Rufte von den alten Reben, Anfang was man sich gewöhnt, meisten Merkovo, Kolas Mann im Kohle. Danach ist zugekommen, bis Manuel Israel ist geworden, der Mitzvah legal ist, dieser Koch. Aber die kennen das noch nicht angekommen im Chutzpah. Weil der sehr hecht in dem Chutzpah von dem Odom, von dem Seichel Odom Atzme, also sein in ein Leben von Jespanus und Milei, wo da sich hecht gewähnt der Luft und die Juche, Jachre, was du schon nicht mehr leben, Jutes Kislev, als Rose, die Rose, soll werden bedugma wie Hashemen, die der Shemen gewähnt, der mich Chanukah, Lehoi, Ralfesser, Besen, Ibachutz, bin Kolschki, Kalvachemer, als in Nähe, bin Beis, Gufo, soll sehr echt sein, wie der loschene Reihe, der Hemne, in Seher, vor der Pschimen, der Jechoya. Ein Sifri de Loch, die Minei Spanus und Davke, aber soll durchnehmen den ganzen Menschen, bis das wir sein Nechet nicht in Beschaße lernen Teira der Chele Kalechem Shebetera. Also lernen Teira al Idee Hagdoma, was Borchu, Batera Tchilo, Beloschen Hagdomor. Wo dermalt sich echt dort der Hauptteil von Borchu Batelo Tchilo, an Ort Mamschir gewähnt, von Avas Hashem und Yiras Hashem. Und das ist der Kirche, der Pirush auf echt, der Pirush auf Poshut von Abraham. Und mit dem Stazach kommt zu dir drauf in der Sache. Als der Kirche, der niemand der Teile, konnte sein, Terosi Shomoro, und Eisi Rachmanul Islam al-Zovu, bewohnte das gleiche in Nedrisch, als Taki Azei kon sein der Scholle, aber der Vavosidas Azei der Favas Hamoyische Bei, Magzire Limuto und den Forschen Tatsch noch, Hamoyische Bei, das Pnimis Ateire. Dies wird mit Pashtus ad Shasse lernt Lechem Shebetero, in das Nicher Adose Beagdoma von Avos Hashem und Yiras Hashem, und Rosach Haloche Psuche Ramba, a Keisa Diovi Lahavose und Yirose, was bringt es Arop in Sifri Yada Chazoko, wie schreibt in der Hagdoma, aber das Sefer Halochis Halochis. Jede Linie, was steht in Sefer, Mishnetel, Rambam, mit das Tayinische Laloch, a viele, als kann stehen in Aloschen Hakosu, oder Aloschen Shel Medrish, oder Aloschen Shel Remes, bis wie Ascholos Rambam, ist der Davke mit Remes, die Mevuer Eichet von dem Rambam Senikel allein. Und das, was der Rambam hebt an sein Sefer, was Sefer Allah ist. Mit dem Loschen Yesedis, Amud HaChochmes, כדי דרוזם גleich sehen dem Shem Havaya. Wo das ist der Rosh Tevis, Yesedis, Amud HaChochmes. Wo es hin Shemes Gdeishim Gufa, ist auch das sei Shemes. Oder wie der Zweite, der rechnet mehr die Prozess, Esser Shemes, ist der Shem Hoetzem und Shem HaMefurish. Und Shem HaMiyuchad ist das Davke der Shem Havaya. Passend der dort regelt auf der Aloche, als es ist dort der erste Mitzvah des Sifre ist. Also sein Jedi in der Lukus, leider, aber dort ist da am Mozui mit allen Plotten, wie das wird regelt, Nimschach im Welt, als mit Zins, Kola Nimzoim, und werden nicht mehr Amites im Mozui. Und in Ruf allem da sein in der Leben von Leda, okay, du von dir, von der Forscher, Anita sagt Lehamim, wo demot das nicht die Sparnsemine. Hat es in der Munde benefischt, aber sein Sechel benimmt es nicht. Ich hasse wird in Ayiva, sie wird es in Ayinim von Leda, als lernt das in einem Leben, aber das kommt darauf in sein Sechel. Wo sein Sechel ist doch verbunden mit dem Sechel, die Pschute, was Schore bemechische Bereiche, wo das ist doch verbunden mit dem Gut, und nicht mit Nefesh Abamis, als der Nefesh Abamis wird durchgedrungen, wo das ist der Ingen Haidia, nicht nur mit Sademuna, was Kol Yisrael seine doch Mamini, Bnei Mamini, a viele benafshom Habamis, wo dadurch darf man doch mit dem Chiddush, weil dort, a Chelek Elekami Mal, Mamish is a Maimin, is Maika Mashvela, und is a Chelek Elekami Mal, Mama. Der Chiddush is, und der Hidos Hatero is, a Kol Yisrael Maminim, Bnei Maminim, ich mit der Nafshon Kipshuto, der Nefesh, was in der Rubischim Guv, und das ist auch Bepashtus, der Nefesh Abamis. Sehe, sie wird durchgenommen mit der Idee, passt nicht auf der Rambam Kipshute, a Keisa Djove, Baavose, und Jirose, ist Salidei, was ist da in der Linie nach Chochmo, bei Ihnen hat Bina, Ihnen hat das. Wir rechnen da noch Eisa, Yisbeine, Bechakmosi und Binosse. Und ich glaube, das in derselben Halocho, wo demut wird kommen zu das, Kehr Wicha. Der Wiener wie schon jetzt Kislev, weil man nicht machen Chalukas Ashas auf schon Abo, einander teilen Messichtes. Und an Neffen, als man soll sie Messiahim sein, in ihr Bies, nicht später wie das Kislev, Abo, Leno, Alkohol, Israel, die Tevo, damit verlandet in die Zettel. Am Dolmati sein, die Shia Melech, Das Lachige der Rinne von Gula Hamid ist war schlimmer, als der Rinne von Gula. Sich jedu der Sipo, was mit sie der Rinne erzählt, an die Schaße gewinnt der Rinne von Alfotzes, Marionis, was verbunden mit der Sidis von der Rabbein, die Schaße mit den Kumme Monnen bei den alten Leben, wie mit der Zilten. und der andere Nussried, als sie gewähnt hat, die Mann mit beim Zemach Zedek. Also Kola Kissen zu da, Prozess an der Jonas Kutzer. Ist auf schien da, jede Eche, die gebaut, dass sie da Prozess an der Jonas in Kutzer. Und sie dort die Majones begonnen, in der Kutze begonnen, in der Kutze begonnen, ist auf schien da der Ingen von der Giula. Und dann sind sie gewähnt der Menschen, und mit der Behörden, die Giula, Amitis war schlimm, und darf sein, darf in der Samen als sie dann Gula Kipschuto.
After the video of Liras Malkeinu Pashas Vayeshev, we're now going to be serving the next course, followed by, no doubt, an inspiring speech which we have merited every year from Rabbi Sholem Ber Kalmanson, the Shliach of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach in Cincinnati, Ohio. I don't want to, although this is a communal simcha of Yutes Kislev, I still want to take this opportunity of wishing a mazel tov, a hearty mazel tov, to Rabbi David Osher Kantor on his Yom Haledes this evening. Have a shnas bracha v'hatzlacha, and only good suras toivas in the coming year. Also, people have got very short memories.
What'd you say?
People have got very short memories. They do not realize that when a person comes in this world, as is quoted in Hayoim Yoim, a person comes in this world for 70, 80 years, it's a piskum shel the Baal Shem Tov, to do another Jew, even not a Jew, a favor. That's why a person is sent in this world for. And there are many people that have come in this world and have done many favors for many people. And once they're there, they're remembered, and even when they're still here, they're not remembered. But when they've passed on, they're forgotten. One thing that we like to try and pride ourselves here, that every person is a diamond, every person is special, every person is choshev to us, regardless of their age, regardless of their standard of learning, v'chula v'chula. One of our regular mispalalim in Beis Moshiach throughout the years, his yortzeit is this evening. And it's Rafal Simcha Leverton. And I'm sure, together with all the others who are in Gan Eden, are taka, working and doing all that they can to encourage the Iskala Shel Melech HaMashiach, that it should be taken from Miyad Mamish.
Amen. Chaim,
happy birthday, Mamish. Happy birthday, Mamish.
I don't want to start to single out people for thanks for all their preparations that went on to make this Yutes Kislev the orderly and the professional way that it has been done, but a special Yashikoyach goes to Ariel for Mama for all his hard work. Mamish, this is not just done in a few minutes. This is many, many weeks of preparation, many weeks of hard work to make sure that everybody has all that they need, begashmias. Baruchnias that we leave to the mashpiyim, that we leave to others. I also want to mention, which I also mentioned, anybody who was still sober at the time, and I wasn't, but on Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah, I made mention, as I do every year, or at least I try to do, when I'm still a little bit compos mentis.
English, what does that mean in English?
Means that I'm still got my faculties, yes. I'm still working, is to give a Shevach V'Hidoah L'Hashem Yisborach, that he sent us a gute shliach, somebody who mamish was moisel lev and nefesh, v'inyonim Moshiach geula, somebody who really gave over himself with all his koiches, and that's Rami Antian. And Baruch Hashem, I was zoicha to know him, and I was zoicha to have gashmias from him as well. I came along at the tail end, if you like, but nevertheless, the tail end is also something which is choshev, and taka that he is for sure a melitz yosher for each and every one of us, and taka that will also help speed on the Skalos Shomelech HaMoshiach, that we shouldn't have to experience another Yutes Kislev in Golus. We shouldn't have to experience another Yutes Kislev without being with the Rebbe Melech HaMoshiach and the Farbrengen of Yutes Kislev, and that this desire which each and every one of us should have burning in our hearts should be brought to material practice, that it should happen and that should be taken for beyond mamish now. Chaim.
Hashem kedem sevela Yishmakel v'yaneh Hashem kedem sevela Asher chalim le'lema Asher chalim le'lema Asher chalim le'lema La yadu Elohim Sholach yadu B'shlayim Chilel 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 B'Yisrael Amelech Mois Nivu Krov Livoi Yaakov Avraham Hashlech Hashem Tzadik Yaakov Elokim Toiri V'Shachar Yaakov Elokim Toiri
What do you see here like the greater
Ad sheyadav b'yim tamim omim leila yachzo Ad sheyadav b'yim tamim omim Take it away. Yeah.
my Laila, my Laila, my la da da da, da da da. Oh, yadre Laila, yadre Laila.
I thank you all for your indulgence. I hope you had a beautiful meal. That's the Gashmias. And now we're about to have a beautiful meal, Baruchnias.
I'll drink
Baruch
today.
Hashem, we are Zoicha today, in spite of all the Ikuvim, in spite of all the trials and tribulations which each and every one of us go through in a year. And I must say that this year for us has been particularly challenging. But nevertheless, we've got to focus on the positive. We've got to focus on that now is Yom Tov, that's Yutes Kislev Chag HaChagim. We have to celebrate that, and we have to realize the Haftocha of the Alter Rebbe. The Taka, that those that celebrate Yutes Kislev will be spared from all types of negativity. Which I
Not
must thank
nativity,
you very
negativity,
much.
even though it's close.
No, it's all right. David, thank you.
David, happy birthday. With your permission,
Shut up.
And as I said, now we are celebrating the 15th year, and one person who's Taka, the only person who has dedicated himself and has come relentlessly despite all the other calls on his time, has dedicated himself from the first Moshiach Congress 15 years ago to honor us with his presence and with his words of inspiration to each and every one of us, regardless of our level. And that is Rabbi Sholem Ber Kalmanson, Shliach of the Rebbe Melech HaMoshiach in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's my great pleasure and privilege to introduce him. Those that needs an introduction to him this evening, many have come year in, year out, simply to hear his words of encouragement, his words of chizuk, which we all desperately need. And without further ado, I am calling upon Rabbi Sholem Ber Kalmanson to address you this evening. Rabbi Kalmanson. No, don't be afraid of him. He's drunk enough.
Not yet. Not yet.
It's not the cough that carries you off.
Chaim. Payers? You don't have enough payers?
No, I said that he doesn't have enough power.
As you notice the sign, it says that this Congress is from Yutes till Chaf Aleph Kislev. Well, tonight is Yutes Kislev, today is Yutes Kislev. And in Mitzvah Hashem Motzei Shabbos, there's going to be a Melave Malka, Sudase, the David Malka Meshicha, in which the routine annual get-together of the Moshiach Congress will take place.
Chaim.
I warned everybody in advance. Take it easy, man. Keep your cool. I therefore would like to separate and divide tonight from Motzei Shabbos. Tonight we are under the banner of a Farbrengen. At a Farbrengen you don't give speeches. Farbrengen is a time to share, to talk from one's heart, to try to be mechazik one another in kiyum ha'torah v'ha'mitzvah and in all matters of one's life. Therefore, by a Farbrengen, if somebody will talk a little bit about himself in order to bring out points that are to be shared in life, is not a sin.
Even if you're from Cincinnati.
My friend, you got the table here. And the reason I say this, he can't control it. It's not his fault. And the reason I say this is because tonight we're talking about Yutas Kislev. And I just want to point out, I was zeicher over the years to do many personal shlichusim for the Rebbe in various parts of the globe. And I was also zeicher to be on first basis on many piyulas that eventually became, public, successful mivtzoim. But one of the things that I want to share with you because of Yutas Kislev is on the day of my oldest son's bar mitzvah, who today is a shliach, but at that time, on that afternoon, I received a call from Rabbi Chadikov. For those who don't know, this was literally the Rebbe's personal secretary. And he asked me if I have 2 weeks that I can offer for the Rebbe. I said, for sure, what's the question? And he said, okay, if that's the case, then tomorrow be in Crown Heights. Tonight is the bar mitzvah, tomorrow be in Crown Heights. And that is exactly what ended up happening. I had the bar mitzvah at night. The Rebbe had told me 15 years earlier, the Rebbe told me that everything that is done in Cincinnati, regardless of even if it's a personal event, should be done as a miftzah rather than as a personal simcha. So at that time I made a upshernish for a younger son, and the Rebbe said to turn that into an outreach program rather than just an upshernish. So from then on in, every time I had something, it made no difference what it was. It was a simcha that was shared with the community as a outreach program. So when it came to the bar mitzvah of my oldest son, obviously this was done in a major way, in a hotel, had 800 people there. And Baruch Hashem, the Eibishter helped that the whole bar mitzvah costed me less than making a kiddush in the morning in a shul. But the bottom line is that that's how we went about it. And I made centerpieces at every table that were little menchalach with the 10 Miftzayim. And it was called a lazy Susan. For those who know what a lazy Susan is, it turns. So any side of the table that anyone sat, they were able to see all the 10 Miftzayim. And since I was have to go to New York the next morning, I decided to take along a copy for the Rebbe. I came to New York the next morning, and I brought it into the office of the Secretariat, and I asked that they should take it in and tell the Rebbe that this was last night's centerpieces. The Rebbe looked at it and was turning it and looked at it and kept on turning it and asked me if he can keep it. I said, well, that's why I brought it. I'm not taking it back. I have enough. So anyway, the way it was told to me later is that the Rebbe actually took it home for the Rebbetzin to see. But anyway, when I got to New York, the request was that since we're coming into hard times in the Soviet Union, and this is before the crazy perestroika and all the stuff that were going on over there, the Rebbe wanted to know if I'm willing to do something unusual in order to scout out Russia as to how to keep the spark of Yiddishkeit alive there. And I said 100%, what's the question? And what ended up happening is in those days you could only enter and leave Russia from Moscow. There was no other ports of entry or this departure. Moscow was the only way. This way they kept total control of your arrival and of your departure, and in between they were able to follow you. The idea here was to fly to Finland, not to go to Moscow, but to fly to Finland. In Finland, there is a ferry boat that travels once or twice a day to what's known as Tallinn. Today it's already an independent country. At that time it was a major part of Russia, and enter Russia through Tallinn. And then already move around as to where you have to go. And this is why I'm telling you the details of it, although I'm leading to something. But I'm telling you the details so graphic is because if there's anybody out there that dreams for 1 second, and Shluchim in particular, that the Rebbe is not going with you and part of you and is the cause of your successes, I think you have to pack your bags and go back home. And the reason I say that again is because, let's not kid ourselves, we live in a society today where the flattery that we see today, the biggest form of flattery is obviously competition when somebody tries to mock and to copy you. And today, obviously, everybody is involved in kiruv rechokim, and everybody is doing the business, so to speak. And yet, you can see a difference. A group of people will arrive into a community, and they start reaching out, but it's through a koilel, it's through whatever else it may be. But their expertise and their successes are very limited. Yet a young shliach, who may be at the time he starts out on shlichus, maybe only 21 years old, comes into a community with a wife who's only 18 years old, just married, and before long they take over the whole community. So you're going to tell me that every guy is so talented, every guy is so successful? Obviously there's more to it, and the answer is a very simple thing, and that is that the Rebbe is poshet with you, doing the dirty work for you, and help providing for the successes. I think at one of these congresses here in the past I told a story which, again, for the sake of this cause, I'm going to repeat, if I told it to you. After Gimel Tammuz, the girls' high school in Crown Heights was a little bit getting out of control. They were tzedrudelt, and the kids were trying to find themselves and not really knowing where to go and where to head. And they were doing stupid things. And the Anhola of the Beisrifke couldn't control them. They were having a hard time. So in order to do this, Mrs. Swerdlov, who is one of the major educators in the Beisrifke High School, called an assembly of all the girls and said the following: we have tried to do anything and everything to make sure that you continue to go in the paths as we've been teaching you all these years, and what the Rebbe wants from a Bas Yisrael. Unfortunately, lately we were having trouble and we don't know what to do. No matter what we do, you're big girls, and we can't just arm twist you and force you. So, the bottom line is you're doing what you want to do and not necessarily what we're asking you and what we're training you to do. So therefore she says the following. She has a recommendation. If anybody decides that she wants to go to the movies, which was one of the Mishigasim that some of these girls were doing, when you want to go to the movies, buy 2 tickets. Why 2 tickets? Well, one for yourself and one for the Rebbe. Because the Rebbe is going with you to the movies anyway. So why do you want him to sit under the seat? Buy for him a seat, so he'll at least sit next to you. That message got across. And they heard loud and clear what Mechanches wanted from them, and that made a big difference to calm them back down. And therefore I have always been screaming to Shluchim that, you're a 21-year-old guy, you just got married, you're getting married, whatever it may be, and you walk into a community, and you have a cholim and a dream that you have the power to turn the whole world upside down and turn the whole community upside down, you should know that it's because the Rebbe is there with you. It's either you're going to face it and you know it, or you're not going to face it, but if you're not going to face it, then don't go. Because if you're going to go and try to convince yourself, Ani v'af siyoid, that I've achieved all these big things, you're not doing the Rebbe shlichus. Period. And that's the end of it. So to go back to our story, I did something that nobody should be doing. Technically, you don't enter Russia through any place but Moscow. But the Rebbe wanted that we should achieve things. And this happened to be at the end of the month of Ov, going into Elul. So with me, I had crates of stuff. I had lulovim, I had asroigim, I had tefillin, I had mezuzahs, I had chalofim, knives for shechting, had all the tashmishi kedusha that one needs. And in Russia, in those days, it was hard to come by. Had salamis to take along with them because they had no food, and those that wanted to keep kosher food, at least the salami can last for a long time. I'm talking about the huge salamis, not the little things that you buy a half a pound in a store. I'm talking about the real McCoy. So you're talking about crates upon crates upon crates. And which Michigan tourist is coming like with a truckload of crates? I mean, this is just nuts. On the other hand, which nut is entering a port that nobody else goes? And you're not allowed to even go. But no questions asked, this is where we're going. I came to Helsinki at night, slept over the night in Helsinki, and in the morning we're going on this boat, on the ferry. I obviously got dressed like a Russian, ready with a cap, and I can pass as a Russian, it's okay. So I got dressed as a Russian, and we got onto the ferry. Now the ferry was already a Russian ship. It wasn't a Helsinki ferry, it was a Russian ferry. You could feel, you could literally cut the communism with a knife. It was like horrendous. It's a 4.5-hour ferry ride. We arrive into Tallinn, and obviously I'm taking off my boxes and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to have some terutzim over here. You know, what do you need so many salamis and so many tefillin and so many mezuzahs and all these kind of things? What do you need so many? We're going to have to answer here. So I'm sitting and thinking to myself, and I already came up with this mishagas, that I put on more than 4 pairs of tefillin a day. So, you know, not only Shemusha Rabbe with Ravid, with all these things, I put on, 40 pairs of tefillin a day, and I was thinking and gedreht to myself this whole crazy thing, and finally, as I'm thinking and worrying, I finally have to approach the immigration. The guy looks at me, and the guy says to me, they were constructing a mosque. They were constructing a mosque at the time in Tallinn. He looks at me, he says, "Oh, you're for the mosque?" I said, "Here's the Rebbe's answer." I said, "Yeah." Everything went right through, not opening a box, not checking a box, nothing. A truckload of crates just went through into Russia that normally thinking under normal circumstances was an impossibility. There was just no two ways about it. It couldn't have happened. And I'm talking das Tachten, I'm talking seichel of what you could see on a day-to-day basis. If anybody is familiar with what Russia looked like at the time, you would appreciate and understand that this is not something that could have happened so easily. And yet everything went through. From there, we went to Leningrad, and from there we went to Moscow and moved around and did all the places that we had to do, and were able to literally come back and report what had to be reported. My report back was so detailed that somebody actually told the Rebbe that I was planning to print a book. It was, in other words, I typed it up. In those days, computers weren't around yet, at least not as prevalent as today. And so I typed it up and I spiral bound it in order to send the Rebbe a report. I made Zachakel 5 copies, one for myself, for the Rebbe, and for Ezra's Achim, the organization in Crown Heights that were supposed to be working with Russian Jews, eventually, that what they will need, and that was it. But some Chochem told the Rebbe at the time that he thinks that Kalmanson is printing a book. And it was dangerous, because in there I had what's called Madurim, sections. So there was this section of every day, which was literally a daily report of what we did and how we did and where we went and what we did. And then I had Ishim, personalities. I was reporting on who's who.
Like a spy.
A real spy, yeah. On personalities, and that was names and telephone numbers and addresses and the whole works. Another thing was, because one of my recommendations was the concept of starting to send shluchim there to stay there for 2 to 4 weeks at a time, Bochrim, I had to give them a little bit instructions of how do you get where through what. So these were more or less, I called it Madrich L'Neiseya, a guide for the traveler, so he would know that if you want to go in Moscow from the shul to Rab Yetche's house, let's grab a famous guy, to his house, you get into the metro over here and you go to this station there, and then so on and so forth. One of the things that I had to report back was the fact that there was no way that you were not being followed. And in those days it was so obvious that it was unbelievable. In every hotel room, first of all, you couldn't pick a hotel. They picked it for you. So I stayed right across the street of the Kremlin. Best hotel to stay. It was called Intourist. Yeah. And when you looked up on the ceiling, you could see the microphones. You could see everything. They didn't even hide it. When I walked out of the room, I used to specially set up my suitcases or whatever it may be in such a way, and almost like sealed it with a chesemes in order to see whether they're getting into it. Sure enough, you came back. They were in your luggage, they were in your peklach, they were everywhere. And the way they work, unlike American or British hotels, is when you come in there, unlike the fact that you go to the to the desk down on the bottom, and you register, and they give you a room, and you get a key, and you do whatever you have to do. Over there on every floor, there's a guy sitting at a desk, and he controls that floor. So he sees when you walk out of the room, he sees when you came back, he sees every move, and he keeps track on every person.
They're very subtle people.
Very subtle. and the keys to the rooms are like this big, and I'm not exaggerating. Because this way you can't take the key out. So you walked out of the room, you have to drop off the key by the guy. You come back, he gives you back the key to get in. So this way they literally have a handle on you all over. And when you walk out of the hotel in the front, you literally see the KGB sitting they're the taxi drivers. So they're sitting supposedly reading a newspaper, but watching everybody coming in and out, and they keep track. So one of the things I decided, in case I disappear, is to register in the American Embassy, to say that I'm here from this date to this date, I'm going to be in these cities from there to there, so in case I vanish, they at least know where I am. I couldn't find a taxi to drive me to the American Embassy. The closest I got to the American Embassy was a mile away. The closest they were willing to drive is a mile away, and over there they would tell me how to walk, but they will not go that far so that nobody should suspect them of being part of this conspiracy here. That's how much it was. How tough was the relationship between America and Russia at the time? The toughness was that the Russians roughed up the American Marines in front of the embassy. You know what means roughed up? They literally beat them up right in front of an embassy, and the Americans were commanded not to respond, just to leave it. So when we went to Leningrad, I mean, after all, you're a chassid, so you want to see what's the story with the Alter Rebbe's prison. Everybody knows that the Alter Rebbe was in a prison called Petropavlovsk Krepos, which means the Peter Paul Fortress. And this was on an island. There's a famous story when they had to bring the Alter Rebbe from the prison for a hearing. They had to go across this river. It was called to the Senate building, to go across the river to come to the quote-unquote courthouse where his hearing was to take place. And there was a famous story. It was done in the middle of the night. And he asked that they stop the boat for a second so he could be Mechadish de Lavona, and they refused. Obviously, you're the prisoner. We're the ones that are going to tell you what to do, not you, us. And there's the famous story that all of a sudden the boat stopped, and that was the end of it, and he was Mechadish de Lavona, and they went further. And obviously, the Alter Rebbe was asked later, why did he have to pull all these stops, so to speak? And he said, because al pi halacha, it's preferable to do things within nature. If you can't get it done on nature, there's a famous story also when they took him to prison. They were traveling and it was Friday afternoon, and he asked them to stop for Shabbos, and they obviously refused. So the axle broke down of the carriage, and it took them till at least Sunday morning to repair. So in the meantime, Itaka didn't travel anywhere Shabbos. But these stories are told time and again. So as a Lubavitcher Chassid, I was curious, what did this Petropavlovsk Krepos, or the place where the Alter Rebbe sat, what did it look like? And it's interesting, because once I checked it, the Rebbe spoke about it by Fabrengen. The Rebbe says that it was known that the Alter Rebbe, when he was in prison, he was visited by the Baal Shem Tov and by the Maggid. And one of the things that he asked them is, why is all this happening to him? And he was told by them that this was because there is a kitrug l'mayla of whether or not Chassidus should be spread on this kind of a level. It never happened before. First it was like to the Rashbi v'Talmidov, it was like, a handful of people, and then Atakya started going a little bit further. But until the Alter Rebbe, Chassidus, the way we know it today, the Chutza Meinesacha Chutza, was not a prevalent thing. And now that there's a kitrug that that it's going to become a prevalent thing, he wanted to know, should he continue or should he stop? If there's a kitrug labaila, then maybe he should stop. And the Baal Shem Tov and the Magi told him no. You continue, and if anything, even more so. And Lubavitch Chassidim know b'mseira that the difference, and this is something anybody can check, is the difference between his imprisonment in Peterburg and post his imprisonment in Peterburg. You can see Chassidus, the way it changed its venue. Pre-Peterburg were short little memorim, a saying, a slogan, and that was it. And post-Peterburg, you're talking about memorim as we know today. So the Rebbe asked a question. The Rebbe wanted to know, and he said this by Verbringen, it's on a video. The Rebbe wanted to know if the room, the cell of the Alter Rebbe was big enough to house 3 people. The Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, and the Alter Rebbe. So in other words, the question was this a physical visit, or was this a spiritual visit? And therefore he wanted to know, if the room is very small, it's a small little cell, then okay, it was a spiritual visit, he talked to them, Milo, whatever it may be, fine. But he wanted
the
to
Rebbe
know.
Rashab asked the question. No?
The Rebbe Sharp?
Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab asked the question, no?
No, the Rebbe is the question. And I thought you wanted to say the Rebbe was sharp.
No. The Rebbe
We all
Rashab
know
asked the
that he was
Friedrich Rebbe, no?
About what?
About the size of the room. Who visited the cell?
The Rashab saw the room.
Oh,
The
but the
Friedrich
Rashab,
Rebbe
right.
saw the room. They saw it themselves.
Right.
They didn't have to ask the question. They were there. So the answer is obviously it was big enough for 3 people. Like that I physically saw. It was big enough for 3 people, which means that this visit was a physical visit from the Baal Shem Tov and from the Maggid. And I know you're going to start the old question, this is already after this Talkus for who knows how many years, and so on and so forth, and what are they coming physically, and how they come, where they're coming from. But for this, I'm not going to start answering you Meshachistische stuff and the spiritual hocus pocus, but we'll talk simple language. The Gemara says clearly that Rabbi Yehuda HaNossi came back every Friday night to make Kiddush for his wife and children. Now, and he was long gone.
13 years.
Okay? If he was long gone, how could he come back to make Kiddush for his wife and children? Can a dead person be moitzi, alive a person with Kiddush? As far as a dead person is concerned, they have no mitzvahs. If they have no mitzvahs, how can they come and be mitzvah? We're not talking already how they came, but how could they have been mitzvah, the wife and children, with Kiddush if they're not mechuyev at this moment? The second thing is the Gemara says that he came bebigdei Shabbos. In other words, he was physically dressed, clothed like every human being, ready to accept the Shabbos, and he came there. So that means that Rabbeinu HaKodesh, among other Gedolei Yisrael, would come back to this physical world in physical bodies to do things that normally and under normal circumstances is a no-no. Our seichel can't comprehend how this thing can happen. And yet the Gemara says clearly that this is something that did happen, and therefore, if it did happen, then what do we take out of this? So as I said before, being a Fabrengen, and a Fabrengen really is you talk to yourself perhaps and you would like to share this with others. So if this is a Fabrengen, and it's a Fabrengen of Rosh Hashanah, and Rosh Hashanah L'chsidis is a time for a Cheshma Nefesh no different than Rosh Hashanah for Tisha, in the month of Tisha. But we all see that Rosh Hashanah is really not on the day of Brias Olam. It's not. When was the world created? The world was created in Elul, 6 days before Rosh Hashanah. And yet, we mark Rosh Hashanah on the day mankind, Adam Rishon, came into this world. Why? Because Sof Kol Sof, Adam Rishon is Bchir HaNivroim. The whole world was created for him, and that he should achieve, because no one else has the seichel and the intellect and the bchira of being able to achieve the purpose of world creation. So the Eibishter waited till he created Adam, which he could have made him on day 1. Why did he have to create Adam on day 6? And we know that all the Mefarshim talk about it and say a very simple analogy. When you're going to move into a house, you don't build a building, move in, and then go get the furniture. You build a house, you bring the furniture in, and then you move in. So in other words, the Sof Ma'aseh B'Machshava Tchila, the end purpose of the creation, the end purpose of Brias HaOlam was man. And therefore the Eibishter had to create the furniture and create all other things that man is going to need for his achievements in order to bring man into this world. People ask the question about Yutas Kislev and about the Yontif of Rosh Hashanah L'Chassidus. People ask the question and ask and say the same thing. If Chassidus was so important and all this was so important, what happened between Matan Torah and Yutas Kislev? Or till the Baal Shem Tov at least. Let's go that route first. And then the Magid. And then their Talmidim. Why did it have to wait? And the answer is that until literally the Rashbi, people lived this way naturally. In other words, when the Eibishter gave the Torah, he gave the Torah's Hanigla and Torah's Achsidus and everything, and people lived that way with their own lives. That was it. You didn't need any additional advice how to live. But when Yeridas HaDoros began to happen, which was obviously after the Jews ended up in Eretz Yisrael, and after the Churban Habayis, now we have a problem. So, Nista the Torah, Chassidus in particular, was now concealed and became the domain of a select few. Came the Rashbi and started to develop it enough to say, B'hai Sifre de Loch Yifkun Be Yisrael Min Galusa. With your Sefer, namely the Zohar, Jews are going to go out of Golus. So in other words, the Rashbi started something that was going to reopen and redress the address, so to speak, of a Jew where he can find himself in order to help bring the Geula closer. I was sitting here this morning. I arrived very early after a crazy trip. I wasn't sure whether we were going to get here or not because the whole way we were in turbulence. The plane was flying up and down and it was just unbelievable. I walk in over here exhausted like who knows what, but obviously you got to daven shachas. And a person walked in here with a little cynicism and laughs at this little slogan down here. Lahavi bepoil mamish is galus melech HaMashiach taken me up. First of all, it's a quotation. It's a quotation, you see yourself, it's right here, it's in the quotations. It's a quotation of the Rebbe, so it's not that Chaim Yitzchak didn't have what to do and he came up with a new slogan. That's not exactly the way it worked. But this guy walked in with a little bit of a cynicism, as if, these crazy Lubavitchers are going to figure out how to do it. And they're going to do it Lepoil. I don't know, I go back to my old question. Open up Asfalt Siddur, open up an Ashkenaz Siddur, open up whichever Siddur in the world you want. Right after davening, you have the Yud Gimel Ikrim that is recited. One of which is Ani Mamin Be'emunah Shleima B'Viyas HaMashiach. And yet, if you walk over to most people who recite this every morning, and say, do you believe that Mashiach is coming now? And, well, you know, why my great-grandchildren should see him, but now for sure not. That's not even a dream. So, wo schreist an dem Mamen? You're a liar. You're not Maimon. And yet, no Lubavitcher says this every day. Open up a Nusach HaRisidah. There's no Yud Gimel Ikrim there. There's no Animanas there every day. So what, the Lubavitchers don't believe it? And yet, ask any crazy Lubavitcher, he'll tell you, sure, now, 11:15, he's coming. There's no question about it. He didn't show up 11:15. He'll show up 11:16. He doesn't show up 16 after, he'll show up 20 after 11. But he's coming. There's no two ways about it. So why don't you say it? If this is what's going to happen, why don't you say it? And the answer is a very simple one. I never saw a person get up every morning and say, Ani mamin, that I have a head. I believe I have a head. It's not working yet. I'll take a cup of coffee, it'll start working. But I believe I have a head. Why don't you say it? Because it's not emunah that you have a head. I know I have a head. It's not something I believe. Animamin means it's an issue that I don't know, I don't see, I don't feel, but I have to believe. To a Lubavitcher, that Mashiach is coming now, over the years, starting with the Alter Rebbe, was ingrained that this is it. There's no two ways about it. It slept another day. It slept another day. Whatever the reason is, let's stop blaming the Eibishter, but let's start blaming ourselves. Maybe if we would have the Avos Yisrael that we need, maybe if we would reach the Jews that we have to reach, maybe if we would do our share to help Lahovi Bepoel Mamish Mashiach Tzidkenu, we would have seen it. The trouble is we're all busy seeing what the other guy is doing wrong. And when we're busy seeing what the other guy is doing wrong, I don't have no time to Lahovi B'Payil Mamish. Because I'm busy. This guy is busy laughing from me that I believe Mashiach is coming. I'm busy laughing from him that was heißt glaubt nicht der Mashiach. And everybody is busy. And the Weile is Zika Chosam and Sefer. That's not what an imamin means. I don't need an imamin that I have to believe that Mashiach is going to be coming. I know it's not a question. It's not something that I have to dream about. It's not a fantasy dream. It's a reality. It's a reality that this is happening. This is already the 15th Congress. Hagute Kasha. Right? Why are we schlepping this so long? And my answer to that is what I said before. Let's stop trying to figure out the ways of the Eibishter, and let's try to stop figuring out why the Eibishter does it this way or that way. The Rebbe used very funny language about this matter. The Rebbe's language that for some reason the Eibishter has a noah of Jews in Golus being Maila the world. I mean, this is, again, in Das Tachten, it's very hard for us to understand. What means the Eibishter has a no? The Eibishter is enjoying that we're struggling. The Eibishter is enjoying that we're having a hard time. And the answer is yes. So are you going to say the Eibishter is a sadist? Chas v'shalom? No. Nachas ruach lefonov. This is the nachas ruach that the Eibishter has, which really, interestingly enough, there is a pshetel, davke a Polish Chassidus pshetel in the story with Yehuda and Tomer that says that the whole story of Yehuda and Tomer is Klal Yisrael and the Eibishter. It's not just the private story, but it's the Eibishter and Klal Yisrael. And what did she ask for? She asked for matcha, upsilecha, right, and chaysamcha. These are the things that she asked, which according to the Chassidus Bertel is talking about the Beis Hamikdash, the chaysim shalakoyin gadol on the oil. All these things that happened in the Beis Hamikdash is this the debate that's going on between Yehuda and Toma. And what ends up being the final statement? Tzod komi meni. Klal Yisrael is right. I got to get them out of Golos. Klal Yisrael is right. For what is it not happening? So this Polish Chassidus Vettel says that the Eibush has a not. The Eibush is enjoying Jews in Golos. And from the Hanoah alone is why we have yet to go. It's interesting that if we go back to Eretz Yisrael and we see a likus mamish beria chushis, you see, because when the Beis Hamikdash was there, we know all the nisim and mofsim that we saw, and this is right there, right then and there. So this is not something that anybody has to have a munah. You see, well, if a person sees nisim gloyim, for him to act like a frum Jew and do the things correctly, that's not a kunz. That's not a kunz. A likus is begilui, so that's not a kunz. The kunz is when the Jew is in Golos, and l'chayre he doesn't see anything. And l'chayre he has to believe everything azoy because it says in Sforim like this. And it has to be in a sense and a munah that the Eibishter is out there and the Eibishter is watching you, the Eibishter is doing nisim, and all these kind of things. That's where the Eibishter has an order. Yes, they take you don't see, and still they're loyal and dedicated to me. Now that doesn't give the Eibishter a right to keep us in Golos. That's a different story b'chlal. But in Metzias, the Eibishter has nachas from us that are still living the lives that he expects from us, despite the fact that we are in a position that we don't see. Now, it says in Sforim, this is one of the reasons the Eibishter gave us tzaddikim throughout the generations. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu, and actually if you take a look in the Rambam, in the last few days what we've been learning in the Rambam, we're coming to a Siyam Rambam now of another cycle, but in the last few days the study of the Rambam, for those who learn 3 prakim a day, will take a look and talks over there time and time again of Moshe Rabbeinu being the one that set the pace for Nevi'im in the future, starting with Yeshua, and eventually all the Nevi'im that were there, and how in every generation there is a Novi Hadir, and a Nossi that leads the generation to keep us on track, because after all, Take, if we're in the dark, totally in the dark, we could get lost. So the Eibishter sends us Nevi'im, the Eibishter sends us leaders who can help keep us on track so that we can live the way the Torah wants us to live. So when we do that, we don't deserve a Yashikayach. No, nobody should dream that we deserve a Yashikayach. But the Eibishter will definitely reward each and every one with a Yashikayach. And yet, we don't do Torah and mitzvahs in order to get reward for it. We say that in Pirkei Avos. We're not doing it in order to get reward for it. But the Eibishter will give the reward anyway. And if we do the avodas that has been set upon us, then we will get the pras even greater than if we did it al manas lekabel pras. There's nothing wrong. If a person is working in a company and he expects his boss to pay him at the end of the day or the end of the week or the end of the month, there's no avla. That's how the business world operates. But if you do it because you're loyal and dedicated to your boss, and then the boss comes at the end and says, look what a good guy this fella is. He's doing it because he wants to volunteer his services. Now if I give him something, it's not necessarily a payroll, and therefore he doesn't have to pay taxes. But at the same time, it is definitely a gift that the boss gives the worker so that he can have something showing the appreciation of the boss to somebody that came and l'chatchila volunteered this time rather than looking for a payroll check. But if a person is strictly working for the payroll check, he's not working for the job. He's working for the check. In other words, he's working for himself. And in order for me to get the check, I have to do a job. But it has to be the other way around. I'm doing a job. If I get a payroll check, I'm happy to. But that's not why I'm doing it. This is what Chassidus teaches us. This is what the Alter Rebbe wanted to achieve with the world. This is what all of us have learned, no matter which Chassidus one comes from, Lubavitch or otherwise, that when you learn This is what comes out of it. It's interesting. I'm going to tell you a story that happened that I personally witnessed. There was, in the early 60s, there was a visit to the Rebbe on Yechidus by what was referred to at the time as the Agudas HaAdmurim. In other words, please don't get me wrong when I say what I'm saying, but I'm saying it in tongue-in-cheek. There was a Rebbe union, and they came to the Rebbe for a visit. When there was Yechidus, two things happened in the Rebbe's room. One was the window shade was open, so in case a woman would go in, there's no such concept of yichud. And B, the Rebbe couldn't stand heat. Till they put in an air conditioning in the Rebbe's room, which literally worked 12 months a year, till they put that in, the window would be open. So if the Rebbe spoke a little too loud, you were able to hear it outside in the street. So when these kind of yechidus used to happen, the Bachim, right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm not going to justify anybody, would stand by the window and try to listen. But this time around, when the Agudas Admurim came to the Rebbe, there was no need to have to stand by the window. Because the Rebbe asked them pretty loud, do you learn Chassidus in your yeshivas? And they were kvetching. And the Rebbe started pounding on the table, literally like this. Started pounding on the table and said, I'm not expecting to learn Chassidus Chabad. I'm asking you, Noam Elimelech, your Chassidus. Chassidus Chagas. Are they learning that? Because if not, with what right do you call yourself a Chassidus Yeshiva? And this is something, like I say, you didn't have to stick your nose or your ear by the window or by the door to listen. This was heard ganz loud. The Rebbe, it costed the Rebbe a lot of agmas nefesh when he was told what he was told. So the Rebbe was concerned not only with 770, the Rebbe was concerned not only with freie Jews. I'm going to leave you with one more story, and then I'm not going to bother you. As you all know, in America, when politicians run for office, they go make their visits to the various different Rebbe'lach because they hope that if they go visit a Rebbe, he'll tell their Chassidim, his followers, that they should vote for this person. So they all come. Von alle Seiten. So to the Rebbe, there was also the same story, no different than to any other Rebbe. They came to the Rebbe too. There was a person that was running for council in Lower Manhattan. This is an area that covers Chinatown. For those that know Manhattan, by the Manhattan Bridge, if you drive on Flatbush Avenue, by the Manhattan Bridge, there is an area called Chinatown. That's where all the Chinese live and have their stores there. And this guy was running for office, and his following, so to speak, his district was this area of Chinatown. The Rebbe asked him, when he came, he says, so what are you going to do for the Chinese? So he looked at the Rebbe. I mean, it was the last thing he thought the Rebbe was going to say. What are you going to do for the Chinese? He sort of got lost a little bit. And he said, they have no demands. You know, when you go to groups, they say, we'll vote for you if you do this, if you do that, if you give us this, if you give us that. They have no needs. They're not demanding anything. So what am I supposed to do for them? And the Rebbe said, go back and you'll find out that Chinese people by nature don't demand. They don't demand. They accept what their plots are, and they don't have no demands, but that doesn't mean they have no needs. So go back and research the needs that they have, and then come back and tell me whether I should support you or not. I mean, but the Chinese all became Lubavitcher Chassidim. What is this, a new element in Lubavitcher followers? But this goes to show you that when you're talking about a Nasi B'Yisrael, when you're talking about a true Manig Hadir, his concern is for every aspect of the Doir. Not only for his immediate Talmidim, not only for his Shluchim, not only for his people that are with him and around him, but for everybody, whether they're in this country, they're in another country, they're in a third country, they're behind the Iron Curtain, in front of the Iron Curtain. It makes no difference where they are. They become, the Nesiim and the Manhige Hadoir are concerned for each and every one, including not Jews, which really is, it's interesting. The Rebbe gekocht sich in Mifzoim, everybody knows the 10 Mifzoim, Neshek and this and that and all the things, everybody knows. All of a sudden, one good morning, the Rebbe has a new Mifzah, Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. What's the meaning of Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach? The answer is that too will make the world a better place to live in. If a goy recognizes that he has Sheva Mitzvahs and that he shouldn't kill and he shouldn't steal, and as we see the crazy world that's going on today, whether it's in Har Noif where you have a Meshuggah that goes in and starts stabbing people and killing, or we just had it in 770 last week where you have a guy that can walk in and start stabbing people and so on and so forth, that wouldn't be happening if they would live up to their Sheva Mitzvahs. So the question is why? Because a Manig Yisrael cares for everyone and every detail, including that of non-Jews as well. So let us hope that since we're sitting by Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus, and we all know that Chassidus impacted the world, and we all know that the room in which the Alter Rebbe sat was big enough for the three people, for the Baal Shem Tov and for the Maggid. So whether you're a Lubavitcher or not, but from the Baal Shem Tov you all believe with, and the Maggid everybody believes with. Asher Alke, we have to remember that the Maggid and the Baal Shem Tov told the Alter Rebbe, continue to be Meifetz Chassidus. And not only continue, but go stronger and stronger than you went before, and that will bring the Geula, the Kishia Futza, meine Secha Chutza. I don't think there's a Chutza any longer that does not have a representation of Chabad out there. You know what they say, two things you can find all over the globe, Chabad and Coca-Cola, and in that order. Chabad comes first because you can find Chabad in places that you can't find Coca-Cola. L'chaim.
Only my...
Thank God.
Gracie Yashikoyach, Rabbi Kalmanson, for your warm words of encouragement. Devorim Ayotzim min halev, Ninos Malalev. We appreciate very much your Mesiras Nefesh in coming here this evening and spending Shabbos with us. Bezos Hashem and Motzei Shabbos again. We'll be zoicha to hear your Divrei Chizuk Brocha. Meantime, we're going to now sing Shir HaMalos and Birchas Hamazon. Shir HaMalos. No, Sheshava Brochas.
teach. Oh, every time, the last few weeks, every time I get better from a cough, cold, the kids cough on me.
Teach.
Today, some class. Don't. So I'm supposed to be.
You're the...
You're my
lettuce.
Oh, no, I'm sad, sicherlich. I'm sad,
No,
I'm schockel.
you're my lettuce.
But I was very misfortunate about Thomas. God bless you.
Amen.
Not just a pretty face. If I've had too much to drink, what can I do?
No, come on.
That's what makes the face pretty.
I'm Macaroni.
Beauty is in the eye of the beer holder.
Out of the bee.
Actually, you appreciate it. You appreciate it.
You've got to give me a cider. You've got to give me a cider with a whole...
He doesn't need that.
Do I understand?
He doesn't need that.
Where's the cider?
What's that?
I'm quite smart because I use that. I did that already.
What?
You have to be smart.
It's off.
It's off. It's you say it's on, yeah, or it's off. It's on or it's off. It's on or it's off.
I just forget it. Just do
It can only be on or off. It can only be on or off.
Yeah.
I can't shove it in the mash. We don't do it.
How old are you becoming? 5, 7, 8? Like my
53.
great-grandchildren? 8?
Gun. Bossy the
Das
gun.
120.
Wir sind 120 noch. Rabbi Simon Willem Benches. Shem Adinoi, Bevorich Me'ata V'Yadei Lom, B'Rishus, V'Ramanon, Rabbonim, Rabbi Simon.
No?
Melech HaMashiach. Nevarech Alayim Shacham Shalom. Tovai Chayino. Ha'ama Paisach es Yodecha U'maspia L'chol Chai Rotzaim Baruch Ato Adinoi Hazones HaKol. Kol Suvachal Tuvasuvat Tuvirachto Sadinoi Elohecha Rois HaToiva Asher Nosam Loch Baruch Ato Adinoi Ala Haaretz V'Ala Mozai.
Amen.
Uvanei Yerushalayim Yirat Kodesh V'Cheina V'Yameinu Baruch Ato Adinoi Eyenei V'Rachmov Yerushalayim Amen.
ועל הבית הגדול.
No. Savim and number Katwadino, Yelay Melech, Koyalama, Boyaraya, Peria Gofe. Ameyate Sama.
Never mind.